Every once in a while, an anime earns its ending. No sequel bait, no cliffhanger, just a story that says everything it needs to say and stops. That's what Code Geass did in 2008. Lelouch Britannia made himself the most hated man on the planet, arranged his own assassination, and died so the world could finally have peace. It was devastating, and it was perfect. But then in 2019, a producer on Code Geass sat down for an interview and said something that should make every fan of the show uncomfortable. His words? The order given to me was, we'd like you to set up a business that can launch new products regularly. Now that's not a creative brief, that's the sales target. By the end of this video, you'll understand how that order cracked open one of anime's greatest endings, and why everything they built after it was never meant to be good, it was meant to be permanent.
予定通り、世界の憎しみは今、この俺に集まっている。あとは俺が消えることで、この憎しみの連鎖を断ち切るだ。
Code Geass Lelouch of the Rebellion ran for 50 episodes across 2 seasons between 2006 and 2008, directed by Goro Taniguchi and written by Ichiro Okouchi. On the surface, it looked like a mecha series, but underneath the nightmare frames and geopolitical chess, it was a character study about what happens when a brilliant person decides the world's problems are his to fix, no matter the cost. And the show spent those 50 episodes making you complicit in Lelouch's choices. Every manipulation, every sacrifice, every line he crossed, you understood why he did it even when you knew he shouldn't have. So when Zero Requiem lands, when Lelouch deliberately becomes the world's tyrant, so that his stage assassination channels all of humanity's hatred into one cathartic moment and produces lasting peace, it hits you. Not as a plot twist, but as the only place it could ever go. A character who bent the entire world was always going to break under the weight of it. Okouchi confirmed it in 2018. Before he ever started writing, he and Taniguchi agreed on one thing: the end of Lelouch would be death. No ambiguity, no backdoor. That wasn't a storytelling choice they stumbled into, it was the foundation the whole series was built on. Now, most videos about Code Geass will tell you the franchise declined because the sequels weren't as good. That's true, but it skips the part that actually matters. Because the sequels weren't accidents, they were a business plan. And the question was never whether the ending was perfect enough. The real question was whether perfection was profitable enough.
Next 10 years プロジェクト待っている。この星降る。その行く先で。
For 8 years after Zero Requiem, Code Geass kept earning quietly through disc sales and merchandise, staying profitable enough to keep Sunrise interested. But by 2016, that steady revenue had convinced them the name was worth more than a legacy. So that year, Sunrise held a 10th anniversary event and announced 2 things: a recap film trilogy and the new sequel project. Fans assumed it was a celebration, yet it wasn't. The trilogy rolled out across 2017 and 2018 as 3 films that looked like nostalgic re-edits of the original series, the kind of anniversary product fans expect. But buried inside was one surgical change. In the original show, Shirley Fenette's father is killed during the Battle of Narita, which sets off a chain of events that leads to Shirley's death in R2. In the recap films, though, her father survives, so Shirley lives. And because she lives, she's able to recover Lelouch's body after Zero Requiem and deliver it to CC. And that single alteration, one character's father not dying in one battle, created the mechanical loophole that made resurrection possible. And none of that was accidental. In a 2019 Great Mechanic G interview, director Goro Taniguchi said they had to bury the past in the past by creating an alternate timeline so the franchise could continue. Then producer Goro Taniguchi called the sequel film Phase 1 of a 10-year plan, because the producer walked into a meeting, received a revenue target, and reverse-engineered a reason to undo one of anime's greatest endings. And the first product off that assembly line? It proved exactly what happens when a story is reopened for business reasons.
those who are prepared to be killed. Consequently, the world is not mine to change.
Lelouch? Code Geass Lelouch of the Resurrection was released in February 2019 with a straightforward premise. CC has reconstructed Lelouch's body using Geass realm metaphysics, but his soul is trapped in the collective unconscious. When Nunnally gets kidnapped by the rulers of a made-up country called Zilkstan, CC recovers Lelouch's soul, he puts the Zero mask back on, defeats the villains, and disappears with CC. Just sit with that for a second. Zero Requiem was 2 seasons arguing that Lelouch's death was the only moral outcome for a character who bent the world to his will. But Resurrection swapped that for a rescue mission. The stakes shrank from the future of human civilization to saving one hostage in one country. Anime News Network's reviewer noted that the movie can be completely ignored with impunity thanks to its built-in loophole, which is a polite way of saying the production knew it was disposable. IMDb reviewers were less polite, and the word that kept coming up was betrayal. The scores reflected it too. Lelouch of the Rebellion and R2 sit at roughly 8.7 across major aggregators, but Resurrection dropped to 7.7. That's the first full point the franchise lost, and it lost it the moment the death became optional. But here's what made the damage permanent. Resurrection crossed 1 billion yen, roughly $9 million at the Japanese box office by late March 2019. More than enough to prove the pipeline was worth building. The movie that undid one of anime's most celebrated endings wasn't even the point. It was the proof of concept, and behind it, the real extraction machine was already running. Sankyo subsidiary Bisti had been producing Code Geass pachinko machines since 2018. One model in 2021 moved 13,600 units at roughly $3,000 per machine. That's tens of millions from a single pachinko cabinet. Then once the hardware proved the IP still had pull, a Lost Stories mobile gacha followed in 2022, expanded globally in 2023, but shut down its English service by August 2024 while the Japanese version kept running. And every one of these products exists because Bandai Namco, the parent company that owns the Code Geass IP, keeps licensing it out. This is the same company whose Gundam franchise earned 145.7 billion yen in a single fiscal year. So Code Geass isn't being managed as a story anymore. It's being managed as an IP axis, and the next product on the schedule would prove just how much that distinction costs.
北の果てに現れた兄弟、覚悟だよ。
Code Geass Roze of the Recapture was the franchise's next anime, its first full series since the original, and it promised exactly what fans needed: a new protagonist, a new story, a real chance to prove the franchise could stand on its own without Lelouch. For anyone who grew up with the original and defended that ending for over a decade, this was the test. Either the franchise earns its continuation or the business plan swallows the art for good. But the art never had a chance, because in March 2023, Takahiro Kimura, the character designer who created the visual identity of the original series, passed away while the project was in production, forcing a mid-production handover. Then Goro Taniguchi stepped back from directing. Meanwhile, Okouchi was credited only for the original story. So the composer changed, the director changed, and it was the largest staff turnover in the franchise's history. The format also told you everything you needed to know. 12 episodes released across 2024, split across 4 theatrical parts and a Disney Plus stream, designed to hit 2 revenue windows at once. The original Code Geass used 25 episodes per season to layer intrigue, character work, and mecha action into something dense and unpredictable. Roze tried to compress that same ambition into less than half the space, and you could feel it everywhere. Rushed character arcs that never earned their payoffs, villains that critics called disappointing, and original cast cameos that showed up, did almost nothing, then left. And the descending line that started with Resurrection just kept falling. IMDb ratings for Roze slid from 7.3 for the first 2 parts down to 6.5 by part 4. Then, Anime News Network's reviewer graded the 4 parts, A-, B+, A-, then B- for the finale. Every major Code Geass release has scored lower than the last, and the gap just kept widening between what this franchise used to be and what it's become. But critics cut deeper than the numbers. A&M's reviewer wrote of the finale that he couldn't help but feel disappointed, not at what I watched exactly, but because of what could have and perhaps should have been. Meanwhile, Anime Superhero titled the review Code Geass Roze of the Recapture fails to capture the spirit of the original. And finally, CBR argued that 12 episodes simply weren't enough to develop the story the way the original did across 50, with the new protagonist barely getting room to breathe before the plot demanded resolution. That's the part that gets me. Code Geass spent 50 episodes earning its ending. Roze got 12 to justify its existence, but 12 wasn't the right number for the story. It was simply the number the budget allowed and the schedule required, because the episode count wasn't a creative decision, it was a business decision. In December 2025, Sunrise held a 20th anniversary event for the franchise and announced what's coming next, a new anime series called Hoshi Oi no Aspal, with a director, writer, and character designer who never touched the original, a Code Geass X Gundam Wing crossover manga, a revival screenings of all 13 Code Geass films running from January through June 2026, a second Code Geass stage play, a VTuber named Louis Takane appointed as official franchise ambassador, and anniversary exhibitions in Tokyo and Osaka. So they found the budget for all of that, yet they couldn't find the budget to give Roze enough episodes to tell its story. Nor could they keep the original creative team together for a single proper sequel. Now let that math work on you for a second. But this was always going to happen. The moment a producer received a sales target instead of a creative brief, the franchise stopped being a story and became inventory. And every decision after that, the Shirley retcon, the 12-episode format, the staff turnover, all followed the same logic. Not, what does this story need, but what does the schedule require? Lelouch died so the story could mean something, but they had to bring him back so the franchise could sell something. And now that the franchise has outlived the team that created it, it just keeps going, not because anyone needs it to, but because stopping was never part of the plan. Code Geass got worse after Lelouch died because the people who owned it decided that a perfect ending was a problem to solve. And I keep coming back to that producer quote. The order given to me was, we'd like you to set up a business that can launch new products regularly. He didn't even try to dress it up, he just said it. But Code Geass isn't the only franchise Sunrise squeezed dry after a perfect ending. And that's a story for next time. I'll see you in the next breakdown.